Good evening for everyone. My name is Clayton Banks. I'm the CEO of Silicon Harlem and an executive board member of the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce. And it's our great pleasure to be connected with the T10 folks because we as a chamber and me as a business owner and a member of the chamber, we're all looking for new ways, advice, and great direction on how to move our community forward through economics. And I think today we're going to find out even a little bit more on how to do that with some of the great minds at T10 and, of course, one of the great minds in Harlem, Angie Hancock, who's going to sort of also be a part of this discussion. So I just wanted to welcome everyone, recognize the fact that this is a series. So we actually, this is our second in line of subject matter that T10 will be hosting along with us, Silicon Harlem, Greater Harlem Chamber, to give as much information, as much access as we possibly can to each and every one that's tuned in today. So it's my great pleasure to now turn it back over to the T10 team to talk about what we'll be learning today, and everybody enjoy. Please be interactive, put some questions in chat, and more importantly, start telling everybody around that this is happening. And we're going to keep this series going, and we want to see a lot more people benefiting from this great information. Again, thank you very much. Enjoy the webinar.
Thank you, Clayton. I appreciate that. Appreciate the kind words in the introduction. So with that said, I'll allow myself to introduce myself. My name is Donna Walker, and I am a co-founder of T10 Collective. Myself, along with my two partners, Kevin and Matthew, represent T10 Collective. And what we are essentially is a consulting agency founded right here in Harlem and a member of the Chamber. And we've come together to really combine our collective experiences with 10 plus years of experience individually in different areas, which include private equity, investment banking, marketing and advertising, and strategy and operations, and management consulting, to provide the knowledge which we've gained and feed it back into the small business community. You know, there's so often a lot of the communities and the businesses within our community are underserved. And our goal is to provide not only consulting services via finance, strategy, or marketing, but also provide workshops, webinars, development series that can help empower, strengthen, and also better position the businesses in our community. So that's kind of our mission, and we've explored that through consulting, through working with some of our local companies, and holding different workshops and webinars with local organizations, and then finding other ways and ventures to give back as well. So that's kind of our mission. And with that said, that's what kind of brought us to this Project Impact, which Ian introduced. So our mission here is to really, during these pandemic times, provide our community with the support they need so that they can better position themselves and for the future, so that they can sustain and also make it to the end of this road and hopefully position themselves stronger in the future. So as Clayton mentioned, this is a series. So the goal now is to facilitate it over the course of 3 different parts. Our initial phase was focusing more so on what we can do today, which is the financial resources understanding and navigating the CARES Act and seeing how we can collect financial resources to help us through these tough times. And now what we're focusing on in part 2, which is today, is digital marketing strategies and adapting different principles to make sure you're adapting to a new digital world. So we'll be focusing that on today. And then in our 3rd installment, we're aiming at figuring out ways in what we can do down the road. And that includes looking and leveraging Google Analytics and different platforms, helping our businesses in our community develop their operating models and also plan for any future. And really the ethos of this mission is that we're stronger together. We partnered with the Chamber of Commerce because of the great work that they do in the community, and this is a mission that they care strongly about. So I thought it would be a great opportunity for us to partner. And our hopes are that you find this helpful. If you have any questions, if you have any feedback, If there's information or things you want to talk to us about offline, whether it be the chamber ourselves, we're happy to connect. We're always looking for different ways to engage. And, we look forward to a productive webinar. So just covering some quick rules of the road. All attendees will receive the materials for this presentation following this webinar. So, don't feel pressure to try to take everything down. We will make sure that everything we're covering today will be given to everybody via email. So expect that in your inboxes. Also, a replay of this webinar will be available as well for you all. So in case you want to run back the presentation in a more audio or visual way, you'll have that opportunity. Look out for that following this as well. Also, we will be providing a survey because, we're constantly looking for ways to which to improve. So, please feel free to share any feedback you have via the survey, which you will receive at the conclusion of this webinar. So look out for that. Also, during this webinar, please, engage. If you have questions, if you have comments, please leverage the Q&A section, the chat section, raise your hand if you have anything you'd like to share. We want to make this as interactive as possible. And then lastly, when not speaking, please mute your microphones just so that we can have, clear audio and have the most effective presentation possible. I will like to also highlight that we do have a poll currently running. So, feel free to respond to that as well. Now, kind of moving forward into the presentation itself. So before we really get into the details of the visual marketing, I wanted to take a break to really kind of talk about what's happening in the small business community. So there's been, a lot of things being covered, whether through the media, through different articles, and what we wanted to do is take a second to really kind of overview the landscape and highlight some things that we've seen and some key trends that kind of inform how we should be, thinking about our businesses and our community moving forward. So, and what might be apparent to some, but I think has become way more apparent today during this crisis is just how critical the small business community is to the U.S. economy. It was found that businesses with fewer than 500 employees account for nearly half of the jobs in this country and 44% of the GDP. So when you see the fluctuations in the economy, it's no surprise that the small business community and the impacts that has happened during this pandemic are a direct reflection of how, folks are living in their daily lives. It really does show the criticality of the small business community and kind of the reason why we're here today. And if you were to look at this at a more local level, these numbers would be more impactful. So I think that's something key to think in mind on just how critical of a role, our small business community plays. Another thing that we noticed is there was a Harvard Business Review study that was conducted where it surveyed multiple businesses across the country. And there were some interesting insights that came out of that. I think for one, it showed just that the significant impact of shutdowns and layoffs and how that spiked significantly. And, that might be common to, most to think of, but it is interesting to find that nearly 45% of the businesses surveyed were temporarily closed. So it really does show that impact. And not only that, but the employment for those businesses declined by 40%. So not only are you seeing businesses not being open, but the compounding effect of the employment reducing as well, which just has a more staggering impact on our communities. And part of the reason why we really have to focus on sharing resources, sharing knowledge, and supporting through these times. The study also found that, these businesses are also cash strapped. Most of the businesses today in the small business community have less than 2 months of cash on hand. So when you think of the impacts that this pandemic has had, as now we're, stretching into 3 months, it's really getting to that breaking point where businesses are in a position where they have to do more with less and make tough decisions. So, with that in mind, we do have to be very cognizant of how we shape, how we plan, how we collectively move together. And then lastly, but not least, I think what's important to also evaluate are what are the drivers? What are the things that are going to shape the way businesses function today and how they're going to function in the future? And there's a few things through this through the impacts of the pandemic that we saw. For one, the direct impact that we're seeing more than anything, of course, is financial stability. That being of the businesses and also the consumers. There's definitely some instability on where we will go, what's the plan, and where things are moving forward, which have residual effects on the community at large. I think another big thing is consumer confidence. With the pandemic and the the uncertainty in the future, you do have a significant decrease in consumer confidence, which directly impacts spending. So you're seeing your normal consumers making the hardest decisions between whether they should tap into their savings, whether they should save more, whether they should spend that money they would typically with one business in another area. So we're seeing that consumer confidence really dip. And I think more importantly too are the stoppages. The stoppages and also the supply chain disruptions are having big impacts as well. So as you think about your business, how you might source your materials and your goods, how you might try to pivot in the future, I think it's really key that you focus on some of these drivers like supply chain as well. And then lastly, what does this all mean? We have these drivers, we have this information, but what do we do with it? And today what we want to walk you through is one avenue we think that can help cope. And what's become more apparent, what more of a heightened importance in these times are being digitally ready. Having the knowledge and the ability to quickly leverage digital marketing and other means as a way in which you further the exposure of your brand or company and have the ability to really sustain and hopefully survive and grow through these tough times. So we want to focus really on is that digital readiness. So that's going to be the focus of our conversation today. Now, moving on to the next slide, what we want to do here as well is give you a quick overview before we get into the details. So we've talked about the landscape, and now as we get into it, we wanted to provide you with an overview of all the different kind of elements to digital marketing. So I'll kind of run from left to right. You have your email marketing, which is essentially your commercial messaging to a group of people. So your constant contact or your MailChimp, which enables you to have these commercial messages sent out to a group of individuals and a listserv that you have. You have your digital advertising, which is essentially your marketing and advertising via different digital means to help deliver those promotional or advertising messages to your consumers. So whether it's an advertisement on Instagram or Facebook, it's a way in which you can get a message out there to highlight whether it's a promotion or a new venture. We also in that have search. So, you commonly when you're in the midst of a holiday season, you'll notice that there's certain brands that appear to pop up in your search engine results more than common. That's a direct reflection of the marketing, which is handled through your internet marketing. So I think that's one element as well. Then you get onto the community management, which I think is a very important piece and one we shouldn't overlook. And that's really just discussing the way in which you can build an authentic community online with not only your consumers and your customers, but your employees, your partners, the folks within social media, and so forth and so on. So I think that's very important as well. And then lastly, your online public relations. So whether that be, different, messagings that you put out or different statements, this is a way in which you can also disseminate and communicate yourself. So there's just really effectively our way of kind of setting the table for our discussion. And now I'm going to turn it over to my partner, Matthew, and kind of walk through some of the various steps in digital marketing.
Thanks for that, Don. Hi, everybody. How are you doing this evening? So with all that said, really want to kind of just take a step back and just start at the basics. So kind of marketing 101. One of the core principles of marketing is really going back to this marketing funnel. So as you see on the screen, the funnel, it looks like an upside down triangle, right? What does it tell you? But there's some interesting things that you can learn from this and really apply to your strategy that once you kind of look at it through this lens, hopefully it will make a lot more sense for you. So let's start at the top. First, you have, the widest part of your funnel, which is really your focus on awareness. You really want to think about reaching the most amount of people possible. So again, these are people who may not even know that your business exists, but you want to be able to let them know that not only do you exist, but you want to be able to stand out in the crowd. We're hit today with marketing every single step of the way, not only physically, but now that we're in such a digital world, there's so much more that's trying to get our attention. And so it's really hard to get that awareness built up for any new business, let alone as people. And so thinking about your business, it's very important now to be able to figure out what are the things that really are your key identifiers that will help you kind of break through the cloud. Sometimes, awareness messaging, sometimes we'll have intriguing colors or certain sounds, things that really are focused on reaching a mass audience, but being able to figure out what are the things that will help them not only know who we are, but then ultimately push them down this funnel that they'll hopefully start considering you as opposed to one of your competitors or any of the other competitor brands out there. And then ultimately become customer. And once you get them into the fold as a customer, it's all about retention. It's all about keeping them as a customer, building up that repetition with them, that hopefully they'll become loyalists and ultimately advocates, people who will be able to evangelize your business. But you really want to start by thinking top to bottom. How can I build that broad awareness and then drive them towards that consideration phase? In that consideration phase, think about it as any relationship, any budding relationship. This person now knows who you are. They may already like you and they may already be considering your business, but what are things that you may need to tell them that will help them get a little bit closer to that actual purchase? You may want to say things about them or to them that make them realize that you see them specifically, that you're talking to them specifically. But also in that consideration phase, the way that you're messaging about yourself may also be a little bit different. You may want to talk about or focus on key differentiating factors, talking about maybe why your product is the best on the market or why your product is better than a competitor. You know, we've seen a lot of brands out there that haven't been shy these days about saying why Pepsi is better than Coke or why, AT&T is better than Sprint. Obviously, there's tasteful ways of going about it, but in that consideration phase, it's really about making sure that you can truly differentiate yourself from any competitors that are out there. And then finally, hopefully you'll be able to push them closer towards actually wanting to engage with your product and become a customer. Obviously, with it being a funnel, you're going to be more than likely a much smaller audience of people. So if we're, just to use round numbers, if we're starting in the awareness phase with 1,000 people, hypothetically, in the consideration phase, you may have already parsed out people who may not even fit within your competitor or in your target audience set. And so you may be down to, say, 500 people in the consideration phase. But at least you're having a much more focused and targeted conversation that once that person is kind of in that bottom phase, which is the sales phase, you may actually only end up talking to 250, 100 people. But these are the most important people in the critical audience to your business, because these are people that you're going to not only be able to have the most one-to-one relationship with, but these are the people that are ultimately going to be the ones that are driving your business. So hopefully that makes sense. But if you hear me reference the marketing funnel or awareness consideration, I want you to kind of think of this visual as we move on with the presentation. So again, we're going to start really at kind of a foundational place in mind. I know at the beginning of the presentation, my colleague Donnie mentioned that if you could fill out the poll, which would let us know a little bit more about your current use, not only as a business owner, but as just a human being. In 2020, we all, in some form or fashion, have a social media account. My grandmother is an avid user of Facebook, but she's not a business owner. And so the way that she would interact with a brand on Facebook is very different from the way that she would interact with me. And so keeping that in mind, each platform has a heavy concentration of a certain type of audience because that's where they're natively gravitating to. But from a business standpoint, you can use that as a strategy for your business because you know that on Facebook, you more than likely are going to be reaching a different audience than you would on Instagram. Using my grandmother again as an example, she doesn't have an Instagram. And that pretty much falls in line with trends because what you'll see is that Facebook, with it being the first social media platform ever created, really kind of represents that standard. And as such, you're going to have the largest mass reach of people than any other platform out there. And with them being in the lead and coming first, they have that reach, they have that mass scale, but they've also kind of gotten a head start where they're now able to have some of the most advanced targeting capabilities. I don't know who remembers when you just signed up for Facebook, some of the interests that you put. It's no secret that you probably didn't change them. So if I was interested in a certain movie or a certain artist or a certain place when I first got onto Facebook, more than likely I haven't changed that. But that was me personally identifying myself as falling into a certain set of interests. And Facebook has kept track of that all these years. So sometimes you may get hit with certain ads where you're wondering, how is it that they even targeted me for this? Or you may be on the other end of it. saying that, oh, wow, I understand why they targeted me for this, because this is something that I've either engaged with or something that's a part of my interest set. Facebook is keeping tabs on every single interaction that you have on their platform. And so it allows them to truly have the most robust and exhaustive targeting solutions. But with anything positive, there's always going to be kind of a drawback. We won't necessarily call them a negative, but just knowing that there may be certain limitations that Facebook and any other platform may be able to provide you with certain good things, but there are certain things that may, depending on your specific strategy for your business or what vertical that you work in, that it may not necessarily be the best platform for you. So as we talk about each platform and go through this presentation, one thing that we really want to make sure that we hone in on is that you're thinking through the lens of your specific business. There's no one size fits all for any business, because as I mentioned before, we're all talking to different consumers, operating in different verticals. And even though there may be some overlap, the way that you may want to interact with or feel comfortable with interacting with that user may differ. With that said, again, Facebook is very different from Instagram, even though Facebook does own Instagram. But having been on Instagram, you'll see that it's a much more visually focused platform. Everything about Instagram is about engagement. It's about having captivating imagery or video or something that's really going to make you stop your scroll. In my previous life in working for an advertising agency, we were always tasked with coming up with thumb-stopping content. What is the thing that's going to make someone stop their scroll and stay for a second? That's called an impression. That's that view. But then it really then turns into, how do you make them go from just seeing it, being aware of it, to then actually considering and ultimately actually interacting with that product. And so knowing that Instagram is much more visual, if you're of the type of vertical or have a product that will rely a lot heavier on visuals, so say for example, you work in the jewelry space, that's something there that you really want to be able to have someone be kind of brought into the fold because of something cutting edge or something highly visual or something that's highly entertaining. But with that, there is kind of the drawback that it does, because there's so much going on that platform and it's so competitive, it does require a lot more time than, say, your Facebook strategy would take. And that doesn't mean that it's any better or any worse, but that is something that you do have to factor in, because many of us as small business owners may be operating as solopreneurs, or we may have a really nimble team. And so we have to be able to figure out what's the best use of our time. So with Instagram or any of these other platforms, keeping in mind that if that is the platform that does make the most sense for you as a business owner, keeping in mind that, you may want to figure out what's the best way to be able to not only parse out your time to be effective with it, but then figuring out where your target consumer is on that platform. I won't spend as much time on Twitter and Pinterest, but we all know Twitter as really that voice box for as human beings, but also as businesses. If you look at the way that a certain business will interact on Twitter versus Instagram, you'll see that it's much less visual and it's much more focused on just text and just using your voice. And in many ways, it does represent kind of the voice and sentiment of a business. And so with that, there's many positives that can come from that, because very quickly someone can kind of build an understanding of who you are as a business and can potentially become a loyalist off of things that you may have said. But as we've seen in these times, sometimes the things that a brand may say on Twitter sometimes can come back to haunt them. And so just keeping in mind that everything from a digital standpoint that your brand puts out on any of these social platforms really truly represents who you are, and you're having a conversation with a potential customer without ever having interacted with them. So keeping that in mind, just making sure that everything that you're saying on any of these platforms are consistent with who you want to be, but also consistent with with what you want a potential customer to know about you. And then finally, as it relates to Pinterest, Pinterest is probably not necessarily always a fit for a specific type of brand. But if we are using the jewelry example, Pinterest is a perfect place to be able to have some success with, because not only is it similarly to Instagram highly visual, but it's all about inspiration. People go on Pinterest because they want to be inspired. They want to have something that's going to get their creative juices going. And in many cases, people will go directly from Pinterest and drive directly to sale. So if you're of the type of business that may be the case, I would encourage you to give Pinterest a try. But with all of these platforms, the one thing to keep in mind is that I think you should use them first as a user and just think about yourself as a customer on any of these platforms. What are the things that you want to see or want to hear from a business on any of these platforms that, is going to help you make a decision for their products over another?
I'd like to make a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Clayton Banks, just a historian here, baby.
Go for it.
You ever heard of something called MySpace?
Yeah.
That was before Facebook, and Friendster was before MySpace. I'm trying to show my age a little bit, but definitely there were two other social platforms that came before Facebook.
Oh, you're right. Thanks for keeping me honest on that one. There is a reason why MySpace doesn't exist the way that it does now. And so, with MySpace or any of these platforms, we see now TikTok is the hot new thing. At a point in time, Snapchat was the hot new thing. And as you would imagine, with anything that's kind of a first to market or something that the first users are typically going to be younger people. And that's just a function of just trends. Younger people tend to latch onto what's trendy a little bit sooner, and they're the early adopters. And so if you have a business that is intentionally trying to reach younger audiences, and when I say younger audiences, I mean anyone that really falls within that under 25 range, Snapchat could be a place that you could have a ton of success. But knowing that the strategy that you have for a Snapchat may be very different from the way that you will interact with someone on an Instagram or Facebook. There may be some similarities because we all know that Instagram in many ways has copied a lot of Snapchat's functions because they are direct competitors. But in terms of who the core users of Snapchat today are, it still is very much focused in that under 25 and really that kind of 18 to 24 range. And so, again, similar to the other platforms, I would encourage you that, give it a try. You don't necessarily have to become an expert at it, but familiarize yourself with it in order to figure out if it's something that you want to build as part of your strategy. What I'm going to take you through really quickly are just a couple suggestions as it relates to building out your social strategy. So hopefully by now, based off of everything I've said thus far, you kind of have a strong foundational understanding of just marketing principles and really how each platform kind of stands on its own and is different as opposed to each of them. And so as I've kind of been harping on, the first thing to really make sure is that you decide what platform is right for you. Don't necessarily assume that your audience is going to be spending all their time on one specific platform, because as we all know, as just human beings, we can be doing multiple things at one time. And who we are on a specific platform may not necessarily be the same person. The person who I am on my Instagram may differ from the person that I present myself as on Facebook. And similar to that, the way that your business is presented on any of these platforms, while there's a level of consistency that's core to who you are as a business, the way that you'll use each platform is going to be different in terms of how you want your customer to notice who you are, as well as how you want to message to them. So in coming up and deciding which platform is right for you, take a second and ask yourself some questions. What are you going to use Facebook for? You may be saying, we'll use Facebook to build our audience and really drive sales. Because lately, Facebook, during this pandemic, has really kind of driven home the ease of being able to go directly from viewing something within Facebook's platform to actually buying something within their platform. They're making it so easy because not only do they want you to stay in their platform, obviously, for advertising reasons, they want to make it easier for business owners to be able to feel more confident that they can have almost a digital storefront right within Facebook's walls. But that may be different from the way that you'll use your Instagram, because Instagram, as I mentioned, is much more focused on engagement. And so you probably will end up using your Instagram as more of something to drive engagement with your potential customers or your current user base. And so the way that someone was going to be looking for you to interact with them on Instagram is going to be very different from Facebook. And then similarly with Twitter, you may use Twitter as part of your strategy just to make major announcements. Again, don't take any of these three as the end all be all for how you should use it, but hopefully in your mind, you're starting to kind of think of the way that you may want to use each of them different. So second, as with anything, I'm sure we all are thinking of our mothers where it's saying, if you don't have anything to say, don't say anything at all. Make sure that everything that you are going to be posting on any of these platforms has a clear goal in mind and is something that is well thought out. We've seen numerous examples of brands who probably wish that they wouldn't have said certain things on certain platforms because either they've gotten backlash for it or it's pretty evident that they didn't think it through. And so to help you avoid making those type of gaffes, I would encourage you to write out a short mission statement for each network. One suggestion for doing that is coming up with a SMART plan. And as you see on the slide, a SMART plan just stands for being specific, having your goal be measurable, attainable, having it be realistic, but also arguably most important, have it be time bound. Give yourself a deadline to really be able to make sure that you're able to have a clear understanding of how each platform is going to work for you and what you want to say, but have it be something that is very timely and something that is going to hopefully help you learn something sooner rather than later. And one important thing to keep in mind, though, is that if you can't come up with a solid mission statement for a specific platform, maybe at that moment in time, it may not be the platform that you need to be focusing your energy on. It's always better for you to go deeper into something that you can truly be able to get more out of, as opposed to stretching your brand thin and just having kind of a blank slate on all platforms. Third is really taking the time to learn about your audience and really digging deep into what they're doing today. For all of us, we've all had to pivot, and this whole series is really a function of having to pivot for unforeseeable reasons. The audience that you may have had due to foot traffic or when things were a lot different prior to Corona, your audience was going to be interacting with your business in a very different way, more than likely. And so if you're a business that is now pivoting to being able to find customers online, it's important for you to really be able to figure out who that audience is online, because they may be very different from who that customer was prior to coronavirus. One way that you can take that a step further is build out some audience personas. And really what will make these personas be as actionable as possible is thinking of what are the differences between any of your customers. If you may be a women's brand that that your target audience is women overall, but then you can have different messaging and segment out your messaging based on different age ranges so that you're able to still speak to all women, but making sure that you have a conversation with each woman to make it feel personal to them as well. You may choose to call one persona Susan. You may use to call another one Tina. And what makes Tina versus Susan truly who they are can be sometimes very small things, but they can be impactful things that by you doing the work and really just kind of sifting through hashtags or going to competitor pages and seeing how your potential customer is interacting with those brands, what are some things that you could potentially tweak to be able to have your strategy be applicable that they will be a potential customer for you as well. Research is really at the core of it. And research doesn't have to necessarily be something that's this big exhaustive thing. A lot of times it could be just you taking 20 minutes and just scouring through a bunch of competitor pages or looking at who the influencers are in your space. If you're in the finance space, looking at who the big brands are, not only from a following standpoint, but who are the brands that end up on your Discover page that people are actively clicking on. You can learn a thing or two from what makes people gravitate to their business that you can, again, take back and figure out ways that you can really bolster your presence digitally. So I want to just have a quick conversation with you about the differences between social media marketing and content management on social media. You may hear a lot of these buzzwords come up all the time, and you may, to be honest, think of them as the same. But there's some key things that really differentiate them. So marketing, again, is really all about drawing people in. So it's really going to be about growth at the end of the day. It's really figuring out what are the ways that I can grow my social media page? How can I grow my audience to be able to have more people in that consideration set? Because if you think about it, people who end up following a brand, there's so many brands that come up on your social feed that you may like their posts, but you don't end up following them. So someone who ends up becoming a follower of your brand really is someone who's already taken that step from knowing who you are and already kind of wanting to know a little bit more about you, so much so that they wanted to follow your brand. And the way that you will speak to and engage with that customer is very different than you would when you're just sort of canvassing the entire space, trying to figure out how to get them and bring them into the fold. And so some tactics that you may be using on the marketing end could be coming up with a branding campaign, coming up with, content creation that will really speak to being able to draw someone in. You may even potentially want to think about paid means. I know sometimes when we think about spending money to be able to bring people in, it may have kind of a negative connotation. But believe it or not, advertising and specifically paid advertising on social media can be extremely beneficial if done right. And I don't want you to be scared of, spending $20 just to learn, because it really truly is about testing and learning. You may spend $20 to boost a post or create an ad within Instagram or Facebook and learn so much from that one ad that you'll be able to transfer back into your business. But while doing so, still be able to reach and bring in new followers into the fold that will bring you into that next section, which is about community management. We hear all the time about, fancy titles where people are social media content managers or community managers. And really what that means is these are people who are really focused on driving engagement and keeping customers happy and engaged with a certain platform or company on social media. So the way that they'll go about doing so is really about maintaining that follower list, really about identifying any key trends. What are the pieces of content that when you post on your feed that your followers will interact with more? It may be, you may notice that a video gets a lot more views or a lot more engagement than, say, just a static image will get you. What are some of the things that will ultimately, when you decide to put a post up, that will be about, hey, go check out, this product that I have or this service that I'm offering. People who are already fans of your brand and followers of your brand will more than likely like your post. They'll comment on your post and they'll share on your post. And those are all very meaningful engagement metrics, because that tells you a little bit more about the mentals of your followers, because then you'll learn, what really makes them and pushes the needle with them, as opposed to, any other person that's on the web. So hopefully that makes sense. But I would say at a baseline level, just think about the marketing as trying to attract people and community management as keeping them within the fold. So these next few ones are, I'm kind of, in the interest of time, just going to kind of flow through. This one, though, is very similar to something that I'm sure your mother also probably told you. It's quality over quantity. We've seen tons of brands who every day may be putting out 5, 6, 10 posts a day. And not to say that there's anything wrong with them, but sometimes, the quality factor is pretty evident in the way that people are engaging with them. You can tell that sometimes they may just be posting just to post, just to give people a means of interacting with their brand. And it could be effective for them, but we as small business owners, it's more important that we're focusing on having 1 or 2 strong things to say, whether in a day or in a week, that can actually really move the needle and build a strong relationship, as opposed to, say, posting 10 things a day that it's pretty evident that we're just kind of posting just to post. At the end of the day, in a post-corona world, it's more important for us to be as human as possible, because it's no secret that brands are run by people. And I don't know about you, I actually want to know that the person that's behind a certain brand's page is thinking about what matters to me right now, being honest and posting meaningful content that is actually going to pull at my heartstrings and make me actually feel something, as opposed to something that's just solely going for my dollar. And so thinking about your business, what are the ways that you can have a strong posting strategy that's really going to be able to make someone feel something, as opposed to solely thinking something? To that end, focusing more about them and less about you. Yes, I understand we're business owners and we really want to be able to drive home why we're the best, but taking a second to really focus on why this person should want to interact with your brand, use your service, buy your product, so that it will benefit them, their family. It could be filling a gap or a void that coronavirus has created, that they're now actively seeking out a business to be able to fill that void. You know, we're seeing that so many more businesses are relying on food delivery services, and they in the past may not have done so, but those food delivery services are providing a service to them. And with you being us as consumers being on the other end of it, we want to be able to trust that brand, to know that they have our best interest in mind, but also know that, you know, they're not just trying to get my dollar. They truly are taking the time to know a little bit more about me, what I interact with, who I am as a person, and picking up on the cues that I may be leaving on my social media platform to let them know what I'm interested in on that moment. So again, as I mentioned before, really taking a second to think about, if you were that customer, what is it that you would want to know right now? And maybe even looking at the hashtags of what they're going on. There's something called hashtag surfing, where you look at a picture or a video, look at the hashtags that are used, and then look at some of the other posts that are being pushed on that hashtag. With that said, though, I would be careful of using some of the largest scale hashtags out there, because while yes, you can reach the most people, that is a double-edged sword, because, you know, if you're reaching 1 million people with one hashtag, it's very easy for a brand, especially a small business brand, to be drowned out within that. So there is kind of a science to using hashtags with your posts, where you really want to be able to figure out what's that healthy balance of having strong reach and scale, but also something that is really going to be able to reach a person who more likely is going to engage with and potentially share your post. And then finally, moving to the last slide, testing and learning. This is arguably the most important strategy that you can employ as a business owner, because it's all about just looking at the cues of everything that you've done thus far to figure out, what is it telling you? Not being afraid to experiment. You know, if you are a brand who has had an Instagram page but never posted an IG story, give it a try. It doesn't necessarily have to be the scariest thing to not have a ton of people interact with you on your IG stories, because that may tell you that, okay, my customer isn't as into my IG stories. Maybe they're looking for me to give them more feed content. Or you could test out different mediums. Maybe you can use video as opposed to a photo. Really being able to test something out, even if it's just for a short amount of time, build on it and learn from the data that each of these platforms provides you with, to figure out, how can I move forward and really ultimately build a stronger relationship with my potential customer and really drive my business forward. But ultimately, the name of the game is really being able to get your customers engaged with calls to action. You know, there's so much content on all of our feeds that's really just things that people can just swipe by, maybe get a laugh out of. But calls to action are really the strongest things to be able to say, learn more, try this, let us know in the comments what you think. Those are some of the things that are going to be the most meaningful interactions that you can have with your customers, to really be able to learn and be able to optimize your business for success moving forward. So again, those are just 6 quick strategies for success that you should, if you're not already using some of them, give it a try. We'd love to hear if you have any questions on it. You know, there's a number of people on this call, and we're actually going to be having some conversations with 2 business owners who can speak to a lot of how they've pivoted in these uncertain times to be able to drive more meaningful interactions with their customers who are going through a lot of the same things that we're going through. So moving on to the next slide, I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Kevin, who's going to just run us through a quick checklist of some things that we can do as next steps.
Great. Thank you, Matthew. So guys, the purpose of the next 2 slides, it's really, what can you do right now for your business in order to take, you know, whether it's a small step forward towards accomplishing your goal. And so just a few quick things along that. And so the first is really just in terms of your digital footprint, which is basically how you're interacting with your customers. You want to make sure right now, especially during COVID, that you know your data is up to date, whether it be if you utilize Google Maps for information, or if you utilize your company website or social media, just ensuring that you have the most up to date. If your store hours have changed, if they need to call you from a different phone number, just ensure that you're utilizing the latest information so that your customers know how to reach you and when to reach you as well. And just one other quick tidbit, especially specific to social media and website, you know, take a moment and especially during this COVID time period and really assess how easy is it for your customer to, if you have a product or service, to really get at their goal. And so, you know, the less clicks, the better. As you know, with Amazon, for example, they're really big on a one-click ability, and that really drives sales. So just want to hammer that home for you guys specifically. And then next we have, are you engaging effectively? And I know Matthew and Donald have covered this extensively throughout the presentation, but just make sure that, you know, you are utilizing the platforms effectively and engaging with your customers on the platforms in which they like to utilize, whether it be Instagram or Facebook or any additional platforms that may exist. And so one of the things that we found is, you know, it's really important to look at what your competitors are doing. And so look at what hashtags they're using, look how they're interacting, right? I have one friend individual who, you know, for her business, she looked over the past 2 months, how have her competitors grown from a user base on the various platforms as compared to her? How is she trending? How can she improve? And so that's something that, you know, if you're not doing already, something that you should definitely consider doing. And then lastly, advertising. As Matthew stated, don't be afraid to advertise, especially paid advertising on your various platforms. Start small. You know, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, you can start with a very small dollar amount to test it out, and then utilize these social media analytics that are available on these various platforms to understand how impactful or effective was my ad. What can I do to tweak it on a go-forward basis? And then in addition to what can you do next? From a digital marketing standpoint, just, you know, you can utilize websites such as Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Google. As far as community management, social media platforms such as Facebook or Instagram are also vitally critical. Lastly, email. Everyone utilizes email. And so instead of, if you are, you know, sending out to a listserv consistently, maybe it's easier to utilize a service provider such as MailChimp or Sendinblue, which allows you to more effectively market your emails and keep track of what you're doing for your user base and your customers. And so with that, we want to pivot a bit, and we would like to basically take the next 15 minutes and have a conversation with two influential people who, you know, are based in Harlem. One is Donna Walker-Kuhne of Walker International Communication Group, as well as Angie Hancock, president and founder of Experience Harlem. So Angie, we can go ahead and start with you. If you don't mind, can you just spend a few minutes just talking about yourself, talking about your business, so that people understand who you are and what you've been doing?
Sure. First of all, great presentation, guys. I was really impressed with the information that you shared with your audience. Definitely a lot of useful tips and information that I hope that they will take to heart. My name is Angie Hancock. I am founder and president of Experience Harlem. Experience Harlem has been serving the Harlem community since 2006. We provide marketing solutions to small businesses as well as nonprofit enterprises that are based in Upper Manhattan. A lot of folks know us for publishing the Essential Uptown Guide, which is like your Bible to what's hot and happening in Harlem, as well as we are the publisher of experienceharlem.com. And so it's your day-to-day go-to resource to let you know what is happening in Harlem. And I see Donna is back, so perfect timing. I'll turn it over to Donna to share a little bit about herself and her work.
Sure. Thank you. It's so good to see you, Angie.
Great to see you too.
I'm very fortunate to be able to work with Angie on a number of projects for many years. And she was one of the first people that I knew that was really doing digital marketing, particularly targeting the African American community in a very thoughtful way. So I'm very proud that we've been able to collaborate for years. So my company, Walker International Communications Group, has been in business as a corporation since 2002. When I started my company, when I was just starting to do consulting for arts organizations, and we grew very quickly, so I realized I actually need to formalize our business. And so, you know, over the years, I've worked with many arts organizations around the world and traveled extensively and on Broadway, and have been able to market a number of shows targeting the Black community in particular. I wanted to talk specifically about, you know, this impact of COVID-19 in terms of arts marketing and content. I'll use one of my clients as a case study, and that would be New Jersey Performing Arts Center, which is based in Newark, New Jersey, whom we often consider as a sister state to Harlem, primarily because of the demographic and the cultural renaissance and leadership there. And so before, even last year, the programming at New Jersey Performing Arts Center, which is, you know, 23-year-old art center, the 4th largest in the country, and we present all kinds of art throughout the year, over 500 different artists that we present. And so usually we would use social media to promote the event, but our expectation was that it would simply support the print and radio advertising that we were investing very heavily in. And so, you know, we were seeing modest results in terms of response rates, share rates, posting, but we didn't really have a very strict measurement of evaluation for social media because it was really just another platform. But in fact, once COVID-19 hit, we had to pivot very swiftly to be able to continue sustaining participation from our various communities. And so we realized that we had to place the content that we were doing live and in person to now placing it on various social media platforms. So we currently do 3 programs. We currently do programming on 3 platforms. The most successful is Facebook. And that's primarily because our demographic is mid-40s and up. And particularly within the Black community, we find Facebook is very, very responsive. And so the community engagement department at NJPAC, which I developed 5 years ago, created a variety of community events that includes dance workshops, jazz performances, film, and DJ parties. So we transferred all of those to social media. Tonight, we have our weekly DJ live party. We sometimes have up to 50,000 engagements for that, for the DJ live. What's really great about the DJ parties is that it's allowed us to build another community within a community. So you'll see on the Facebook live chat, people are doing shout outs to their friends. They're saying, hey, so-and-so, haven't seen you in a long time. What's going on? What are you doing? So people are having chats while they're enjoying the music. And then we decided, well, let's see if we can monetize this. And in fact, we've been able to raise money on, you know, having the DJ doing shout outs throughout the posting and say, hey, you want to keep this going? Just open up your wallets, give what you can. That's been really surprising. We didn't even expect that. And then the third really great benefit of this social media is that our audiences have expanded so much. When we would do a DJ party at NJPAC in the building, in the lobby, the most people we would have might be 800 to 1,000. For instance, if we had a Shaka Khan concert or, you know, one of the other R&B groups, Earth, Wind and Fire, and we have, you know, a live DJ in the lobby afterwards, no more than that. But now, we have thousands and they're global. So we've been able to really expand our audience base and the diversity of that through social media platforms. So that's been really great because our sponsors are now doubly happy. You know, sponsors want to see their name aligned with a really great cultural product, where they're now not only seeing their name aligned, but they're now seeing a whole new group of people that are seeing that they support the arts. So this has had multiple benefits for us that we didn't necessarily anticipate. We were just trying to make sure our content was someplace live, and it is. So we named the whole series In Your Living Room. So we're saying that in your living room, you can enjoy everything that we used to do, and you don't have to go out because we're quarantined, you can be safe. So that's been really, really great. The other platform that we use to a lesser extent is Instagram. So on Instagram, we do our jazz conversations, and those are held every other Tuesday at 7. And these jazz conversations are dialogues with some of the jazz masters in Newark, like Wayne Winborn and Mark Gross, who performs on Broadway and also teaches in NJPAC. And these have been really great platforms for them to have the most illuminating conversations about jazz artists. We have lesser participation on that because it's Instagram, and NJPAC's footprint is not as significant on Instagram yet, but we want to grow that. And we also, it's a younger demographic. And so we're cultivating that group, very carefully. And then the third platform we use is Zoom, and that's for our live dance classes. And that's to make sure that the instructor can see the students and everyone can see each other. So again, it's another community. Every Wednesday, we present a different type of dance. It might be Bhangra, it could be salsa, it could be jazz, ballet, modern, African. And so we'll have up to 300-400 people sign up for a dance class. Normally in Newark, we usually have between 30 and maybe 40 because the space can accommodate more than that. Now online, we can have several hundred. And so again, growing our audiences exponentially, sponsors that are doubly happy, creating more of a global and diverse audience. We're seeing them multi-generational in the dance. We see parents with their kids. So it's really been amazing. Of course, our plan is to continue this digital content, sharing at least throughout the summer. And then we'll look at the fall to see how much of that we might sustain. But I'm sure we're going to keep some of it with us along with the live programming.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Donna, for that. That was very informative. Angie, for a question for you, in terms of COVID and where we are, can you just talk a little bit about how you've been able to pivot and things that you're seeing within your space for people being able to pivot in this COVID and digital environment that we're in?
Sure. One of the things that we've done since the onset of COVID is we've pivoted our weekly newsletter, which used to talk about all the great upcoming events that were taking place in Harlem, what are the great businesses to check out. And we repositioned it as Experience Harlem at Home. What we realized very quickly is that there's so many great experiences that were being offered by our local businesses that you could enjoy and partake in, such as DJ parties, without leaving your home. And certainly we recognize in this moment how important it is to continue to support our local businesses. A lot of the Main Street businesses, they're going to be okay, and Donna can attest to the Great Recession 10 years ago, how many Harlem small businesses didn't make it, and how that was really a turning point in terms of the complexion of the businesses that you see in Harlem today. So in our Experience Harlem at Home newsletter, we try to have a theme for each day. So it's really cool stuff like Motivation Monday, Wellness Wednesday, Spirit Sunday, where we're highlighting health and wellness businesses that'll, just kind of help you in this moment. There's a lot that we have to grasp, not only in dealing with COVID, but in the last couple of weeks, just, the heightened, impact of what's happening to Black folks in this moment. And it's a lot for us to absorb in a process, and it's too much to do on our own. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have a little bit of fun, and it's important to keep, to bring some fun and lightness in this moment as well. So we talk about the restaurants that have great takeout experiences that you can enjoy through Takeout Tuesday or Thirsty Thursday. And then also what we think is important, and what I would also like to highlight to your audience as they're thinking about their digital strategies, is how are you being of service in this moment? It cannot be all about you. And if it is, you're going to lose. I think it's important to talk about, not only what are you doing for the community, but, how are you looking out for your employees? I think a lot of us saw And we were, we were moved by Melba from Melba's Harlem when she was on 60 Minutes and talked about how, she was staying open for her employees and how, she wanted to make sure that they were taken care of in this moment. I think it's also important to talk about what safety measures you're taking, not only for your employees, but for the public, because even though things are starting to open back up, some folks are gonna be nervous about, where they're going and, what they're doing. And so the extent to which you can educate and just continuously reiterate that information, I think is very important as well.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Angie, just a follow-up question. What social media platforms have you found to be most effective, or does it really depend on the company or the individual specifically?
It really depends on the company or the individual. And so not only do we manage social media platforms for Experience Harlem, and we use the major ones, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I think it depends on the age, the demographics, and who you're targeting and what it is you're trying to sell them. So I think the point that you made earlier in your presentation around understanding who is your target, where are they in terms of social media, their age is very important. You're very much, you hit the nail on the head when you spoke of Facebook definitely reaches a more mature audience, Instagram, younger, and then, even still TikTok and Snapchat for the 25 and under group. And so it just really depends on the client and the program in terms of which platform is most effective.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. And so Donna, a question for you, just, if there's something that you've learned throughout this COVID process that you'd like to leave people with, do you mind just hitting on that for a moment? I think it'll be extremely helpful because it seems as though that you've, pivoted tremendously and are growing a massive user base globally at this point.
Well, I'm very inspired by the statements that many arts organizations have made in support of the racial injustice movement that we are experiencing now. It's been tremendous. I've never seen so many arts organizations publicly state that they're standing in solidarity with Black and Brown, and that they are committed to being part of the change. So I believe this is really creating a wave of energy that will be transformative. So that's been astounding. I think with regard to COVID-19, I completely agree with Angie about, demonstrating what you're doing that's going to help the community. And I'm really proud to be a member of Harlem Week Board of Directors. And we, along with the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce and Harlem Arts Alliance, have really looked at how we can help transform our Harlem community. And through our Harlem GoFundMe campaign, which exists on multiple platforms, we've raised well over $100,000, to support our food supply servicing activities and making sure there are products that are made available to people to keep their homes clean, to support our seniors, to help our students. That's what Clayton has been doing, really educating them on the digital divide and making sure that they have computers and laptops and know how to use them and have Wi-Fi. All of those details speak to quality of life. And I think this is the time for all of us to demonstrate what it means to have a magnanimous life, to really be generous in what we do and how we support, and using social media to talk about it. So I don't think we should just talk about how bad things are on these different platforms. I think we should talk about what we're doing to be transformative. And that's what inspires people, because fundamentally we need hope. And hope comes from movement, from looking forward, to inspiration, to collaboration. And so that's the kind of language, and those are the organizations that I see will be sustainable, because despite the darkness, they're able to still move to the light. That's what we have to really do. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for those words. Very inspiring. I mean, we're all dealing with this on a daily basis. I mean, especially for people of color, it's something that we all have experienced and are currently living on a daily basis. So, again, appreciate it. So, with that, I don't think we have too much more time. So Donna and Angie, I wanted to thank you both for spending a few minutes with us and providing us with words of wisdom. We're happy to provide both Donna and Angie's contact information for anyone that would like to reach out to them specifically with any additional questions. But again, thank you both for getting on with us. And with that, Donald, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah, good night. Yeah, thank you again.
Night, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So definitely appreciate Donna and Angie spending some time with us to talk. Very helpful and informative. So I hope that, I think there's a lot we can all take from that. So thank you again. Appreciate it. All right. So as Donna did mention there at the end, what we want to really shed light on is our partners in this. So the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce has their Support Harlem Now initiative that's currently running. So, we wanted to take the time to really spotlight it here. And, for the folks in the webinar, if you have, if you want to support or give anything you have, feel free to check their campaign out. They're doing a lot of great work in the community across a lot of different areas. And, we're always looking for more support. So if you do have anything to give or would like to learn more information, please feel free to check the link out in the slide in front of you. And if you do want to learn more about the initiative as well, feel free to reach out to the chamber directly or to us, and we'll point you in the right direction. But we did want to take the time to spotlight this, program that's doing a lot of great work in the community as they're trying to combat the effects of this pandemic. And lastly, I just wanted to thank everyone, from our panelists, our guest speakers, to our attendees. We do really appreciate you guys taking your evening and afternoon and spending with us. We hope that you found the information and the presentation helpful. And, again, I want to reiterate, we're here to help support in any way we can. So if you have any questions, if you want to reach out to us in any way, or if there's any specific information you want to learn more about that we maybe didn't cover today or expand upon from today, don't hesitate to reach out. We've listed the Chamber of Commerce's contact information in addition to ours for T10. So, feel free to drop us an email or follow us on Facebook or Instagram respectively. And we will be, we'll also, make sure that we communicate with our guest speakers, Angie and Don as well. So the opportunity to kind of follow them as well. But we did want to, make sure we spent the time to say thank you. We hope you found it helpful. We will be following up with the materials in addition to a video and a survey. So, keep an eye out for that. We hope you enjoyed, and we will be, having our third installment coming up in the next couple of weeks, which will be focusing more on the ways in which we can leverage the Google platform to help expand your business, whether it's through analytics or search. So we hope that you can join us there for that. We'll be sending out more information via email and also via Instagram. So, keep an eye out for that. And thank you again, and, have a great night. Take care.